The first time Elena spoke, she did not cry like other babies. Instead, she made sounds that seemed to come from deep within her throat, rolling and rumbling like distant thunder. The nurses at the medical station on Europa thought something was wrong with her vocal cords. Dr. Sarah Chen, the chief medical officer, ran every test she could think of. The scans showed nothing unusual, yet the sounds the 3-month-old baby made were unlike anything human. "It's probably just a minor throat issue," Dr. Chen told Elena's parents, Marcus and Lisa Reeves. "She'll grow out of it," but Elena did not grow out of it. As months passed, her strange sounds became more complex. By her first birthday, she was making elaborate vocalizations that sounded almost like speech, though no human language anyone recognized. The sounds had a musical quality, rising and falling in patterns that seemed too organized to be random baby babble. Marcus Reeves was a mining engineer on Europa, one of the outer colonies where humans had been living for 50 years. He spent his days drilling through ice to reach the ocean below, searching for rare minerals. Lisa worked as a communications specialist, maintaining contact between Europa and Earth. They were practical people who believed in science and logic. Yet their daughter was producing sounds that made no sense. "Maybe she's just gifted," Lisa suggested one evening as they watched Elena playing with her toys. The baby was making her strange sounds while stacking blocks as if she were commenting on her work. "Some children develop language skills very early, but what language is she speaking?" Marcus asked. "I've heard recordings of every Earth language, and this isn't any of them. It's not even close." Dr. Chen recommended they take Elena to a specialist on Mars, where there were better facilities for studying unusual cases. The journey took 2 weeks, and throughout the trip, Elena continued making her mysterious sounds. Other passengers on the transport ship were fascinated by the baby, who seemed to be having conversations with herself in an unknown language. On Mars, they met Dr. James Morrison, a xenolinguist who studied alien languages. The colonies had made contact with several alien species over the past 30 years, and Dr. Morrison was an expert in how different species communicated. He was particularly interested in Elena's case because her sounds reminded him of something he had heard before. "Play that recording again," Dr. Morrison asked after listening to Elena for several hours. He had been taking detailed notes, mapping the patterns in her vocalizations. The part where she was looking at the red toy. Marcus played the recording on his tablet. Elena's voice filled the room, producing a series of complex sounds that rose and fell like music. Dr. Morrison's face went pale. "This is impossible," he whispered. "She's speaking Draconic." "Draconic?" Lisa asked. "What's that?" "The language of the Drakmari. They're a species we've had limited contact with. They live in the Centauri system, and they look like what humans used to call dragons. They have scales, wings, and they're much larger than us, but they're highly intelligent." "How could our daughter know their language?" Marcus demanded. "We've never even seen one of these Drakmari. Elena has never left the human colonies." Dr. Morrison shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but I'm certain that's what she's speaking. I've studied Draconic for 15 years. The grammar patterns, the tonal variations, even the way she uses throat resonance, it's definitely their language. And she's not just making random sounds. She's actually forming coherent sentences." "What is she saying?" Lisa asked, looking at her daughter with new eyes. "She's describing her surroundings," Dr. Morrison explained. "When she was playing with the red toy, she said something like, 'The crimson object pleases me' in Draconic. When you gave her food earlier, she said, 'Nourishment arrives.' She's using the language perfectly with all the proper grammatical structures. The implications were staggering." No human had ever learned Draconic naturally. The few humans who could speak it had studied for years using computer programs and alien tutors. Yet here was a baby who seemed to know it instinctively. "We need to inform the colonial authority," Dr. Morrison said. "This could be the most important discovery in human history. If Elena can naturally speak Draconic, she might be the key to better relations with the Drakmari." But Lisa and Marcus were worried. They had heard stories about children with unusual abilities being taken away for government study. They wanted their daughter to have a normal life, not to become a scientific experiment. "What if we don't report this?" Lisa asked. "What if we just keep it quiet?" "You can't," Dr. Morrison said gently. "Other people will notice. As Elena gets older, her ability will become more obvious. Besides, this gift could benefit all of humanity. The Drakmari have technologies we can barely understand. If Elena can communicate with them naturally, she could help bridge the gap between our species. That night, Marcus and Lisa talked long into the Martian dawn. They knew Dr. Morrison was right, but they were terrified of what might happen to Elena. They had seen how the government treated valuable assets, and they didn't want their daughter to become a tool for political gain. Maybe we should run, Marcus suggested. Take Elena to one of the frontier worlds where the government doesn't have much influence. We can't run forever, Lisa replied. And if Elena really does have this gift, maybe we have a responsibility to share it with the world. The next morning, Elena woke up and immediately began speaking in her dragon language. But this time, something was different. She seemed to be responding to something only she could hear, having a conversation with an invisible partner. Her sounds became more urgent, more excited. Dr. Morrison, who had been staying nearby to study Elena, rushed over when he heard the commotion. He listened carefully to Elena's vocalizations, his expression growing more and more amazed. "She's not just speaking Draconic," he said in a stunned voice. "She's receiving it too. She's having a conversation with someone who's speaking back to her in the same language. But there's no one here," Marcus pointed out. "She's just a baby playing by herself." "No," Dr. Morrison said, his hands shaking as he made notes. "Someone is talking to her. Someone who speaks perfect Draconic. I can tell from her responses that she's answering questions and reacting to statements. But we can't hear the other side of the conversation." Lisa picked up Elena, who continued making her dragon sounds even while being held. The baby looked directly at her mother and made a series of musical notes that sounded almost like a greeting. "What did she just say?" Lisa asked. Dr. Morrison consulted his notes. "She said, 'Hello, birth mother. The Starwing sends greetings to our nest.'" The room fell silent except for Elena's continued vocalizations. Starwing was a Draconic term that had no direct human translation, but it referred to something like a guardian spirit or ancestral guide, and Elena had just claimed that this Starwing was sending greetings to their family. Something extraordinary was happening, something that would change everything they thought they knew about their daughter and about the universe itself. 3 days after Dr. Morrison's shocking discovery, the Colonial Authority arrived on Mars. They came in a sleek black transport ship that landed at the research facility where Elena and her family were staying. The officials wore crisp uniforms and carried themselves with the kind of authority that made ordinary people nervous. Director Catherine Walsh led the team. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had spent 20 years dealing with alien contact situations. She had seen many strange things in her career, but a human baby who could naturally speak Draconic was something entirely new. "Mr. and Mrs. Reeves," she said as she entered their quarters, "I'm sure you understand the significance of your daughter's abilities. We need to study this phenomenon carefully." "Our daughter is not a phenomenon," Lisa said firmly. "She's a baby who needs her parents." "Of course," Director Walsh replied smoothly. "We have no intention of separating your family. But we do need to understand how Elena acquired these abilities. It could be crucial for human-Drakmari relations." Elena was sitting in her high chair, eating breakfast and making her usual dragon sounds. Director Walsh listened carefully, even though she couldn't understand the language. She had brought her own xenolinguist, Dr. Rebecca Torres, who confirmed Dr. Morrison's findings. "The child is definitely speaking fluent Draconic," Dr. Torres reported. "Her pronunciation is perfect, better than most humans who have studied the language for years. But there's something else unusual about her speech patterns." "What do you mean?" Director Walsh asked. "She's using archaic forms of the language," Dr. Torres explained. "Draconic has evolved over the centuries like any living language. But Elena is speaking in forms that our records suggest were used hundreds of years ago. It's as if she learned from someone who lived in the distant past." This revelation made everyone in the room uncomfortable. How could a human baby know ancient forms of an alien language? The questions were multiplying faster than the answers. Dr. Morrison had been monitoring Elena's conversations with her invisible partner, and he had made some disturbing discoveries. "She's not just chatting casually," he reported. "The entity she's communicating with seems to be teaching her things. Yesterday, she started making new sounds that I've never heard before, not even in our most complete Draconic databases." "What kind of things is this entity teaching her?" Director Walsh asked. "Advanced concepts," Dr. Morrison replied. Mathematics, stellar navigation, what appears to be engineering principles. When I show her simple puzzles, she solves them immediately and then explains the solutions in Draconic using technical terms that most adult Drakmari wouldn't know. To demonstrate, Dr. Morrison placed a complex three-dimensional puzzle in front of Elena. The puzzle was designed for children much older than her, with interlocking pieces that required spatial reasoning to solve. Elena looked at it for a moment, then began manipulating the pieces while speaking in her dragon language. Within minutes, she had solved the puzzle completely. Then she looked up at the adults and made a series of sounds that Dr. Morrison translated as, "The geometric harmony reflects the cosmic patterns that the star wings use to navigate between worlds." A 1-year-old child should not be able to say things like that, Dr. Torres whispered. Even if she could speak perfect English, the concepts she's expressing are far beyond her developmental level. Director Walsh was beginning to realize that Elena's case was more complex than anyone had imagined. "Dr. Morrison, I want you to try something. Can you speak to Elena in Draconic and see if she responds?" Dr. Morrison nodded and turned to Elena. In careful Draconic, he said what translated to, "Hello, little one. Can you tell me who teaches you these words?" Elena's response was immediate and startling. She looked directly at Dr. Morrison and spoke rapidly in Draconic, her small hands gesturing as if she were explaining something important. Her voice carried an urgency that seemed far too mature for her age. "What did she say?" Director Walsh demanded. Dr. Morrison's face had gone pale. "She said, 'The guardian of the ancient flame speaks to me from beyond the veil of stars. She tells me that the time of convergence approaches, and the child of two worlds must be prepared to bridge the gap between flame and flesh.'" The room fell silent. Even Elena stopped making sounds as if she sensed the gravity of what she had just revealed. "Child of two worlds," Director Walsh repeated slowly. "Dr. Torres, is that a known Draconic term?" "It appears in some of their oldest legends," Dr. Torres replied, consulting her digital database. "According to Drakmari mythology, a child of two worlds is a being who can exist in both the physical realm and the spirit realm simultaneously. They're supposed to appear during times of great change to help different species understand each other." "Mythology," Director Walsh said dismissively. "We're dealing with a child who has somehow learned an alien language, not ancient prophecies." But Dr. Morrison looked troubled. "Director, there's something else. Our listening posts in the outer system have been picking up unusual signals for the past week. Long-range sensors suggest that a Drakmari ship is approaching our solar system. It's the first time they've ever come this close to Earth space. When will it arrive?" Director Walsh asked sharply. "Approximately 6 weeks," Dr. Morrison replied. "And Director, the signals we've intercepted suggest they're specifically asking about the child of two worlds." The implications hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. Somehow the Drakmari knew about Elena. They were coming to Earth space because of her, drawn by her impossible ability to speak their language and communicate with their ancient spirits. "We need to prepare," Director Walsh said, her mind already working through the political and military implications. "If the Drakmari are coming here because of Elena, we need to understand her abilities better before they arrive." "What if they want to take her?" Lisa asked, voicing the fear that had been growing in her heart. "What if they think she belongs with them instead of with us?" "We won't let that happen," Director Walsh assured her, though her voice lacked conviction. The truth was that humans knew very little about Drakmari intentions or capabilities. If they decided they wanted Elena, there might not be much humanity could do to stop them. Elena, seemingly unaware of the adult fears swirling around her, had picked up a toy spaceship and was making her dragon sounds at it. But now that everyone was listening more carefully, they could hear something different in her voice. There was a sadness there, a longing that seemed far too deep for a child her age. "She misses them," Dr. Morrison said suddenly. "Listen to the emotional undertones in her speech. She's talking about home, but not our home. She's talking about a place among the stars with crystal caves and eternal flames. How can she miss a place she's never been?" Marcus asked desperately. "Maybe," Dr. Torres said quietly. "She has been there, just not in the way we understand." As if responding to their conversation, Elena looked up from her toy and spoke one clear word in Draconic. Dr. Morrison translated it immediately. "Remember." The word hung in the air like a challenge. forcing them all to confront the possibility that Elena's connection to the Drakmari was deeper and more mysterious than any of them had imagined. And with a dragon ship approaching Earth space, they were running out of time to understand the truth. The Drakmari ship arrived ahead of schedule, appearing at the edge of Earth's solar system like a jewel made of metal and light. It was massive, easily the size of a small city with flowing curves that looked more grown than built. The hull seemed to shift between silver and gold as it moved, reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt human eyes to watch directly. Director Walsh had moved Elena and her family to a secure facility on Luna, Earth's moon. The base was humanity's most advanced research station, equipped with the best communication systems and defensive capabilities. If the Drakmari had hostile intentions, Luna Base would give them the best chance of protecting Elena while studying her abilities. "They're requesting permission to approach," reported Commander Sarah Kim, the base's military liaison. "The message is coming in multiple languages, including perfect English." "What exactly are they saying?" Director Walsh asked. Commander Kim consulted her console. "They say they come in peace to meet the child of two worlds who calls to their ancestors. They're asking for safe passage and a chance to speak with her." Elena, now 15 months old, had been unusually quiet since the Drakmari ship appeared. She sat in her playroom surrounded by toys, but instead of playing, she stared out the window toward space. Her dragon sounds had become softer, more musical, almost like she was singing lullabies to herself. Dr. Morrison had been working around the clock to understand Elena's connection to the Drakmari. His latest discovery was perhaps the most shocking yet. "I've been analyzing the structure of Elena's brain using our most advanced scanners," he reported to the assembled team. "There are neural pathways that shouldn't exist in a human brain. They're similar to patterns we've observed in Drakmari brain scans." "Are you saying she's part alien?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking. "No," Dr. Morrison replied carefully. "She's genetically human, but her brain is processing information in ways that are typically associated with Drakmari consciousness. It's as if she has access to both human and Drakmari ways of thinking." Dr. Torres had been studying ancient Drakmari texts that the aliens had shared with humanity years earlier. "I found something interesting in their historical records," she announced. "There are references to a phenomenon they call soul bridging. According to their beliefs, sometimes the spirit of a Drakmari who has died will attach itself to a newborn of another species, sharing its knowledge and memories." "You're talking about reincarnation?" Director Walsh said skeptically. "Not exactly," Dr. Torres explained. "More like a spiritual partnership. The Drakmari believe that some souls are too important to lose completely when their bodies die. These souls become guardians who can guide members of other species during critical times in history." Elena suddenly stood up in her playroom and walked to the window. She placed her small hands against the glass and began speaking in Draconic, her voice carrying clearly through the room's communication system. Her words were more complex than anything she had said before, filled with emotional depth that made the adults listening feel like they were eavesdropping on a deeply personal conversation. "What is she saying?" Director Walsh demanded. Dr. Morrison listened carefully, his face growing more amazed with each word. She's greeting someone. She's saying, 'Welcome home, Fireheart. The small wings has been waiting for you in the place of cold metal and sharp angles.'" "Fireheart?" Commander Kim asked. "What does that mean?" "It's a term of deep affection in Draconic," Dr. Torres explained. "Like calling someone your beloved or your heart's companion. And small wings appears to be what she calls herself." Elena continued speaking, and now her words carried an urgency that made everyone in the room lean forward. Dr. Morrison translated as she spoke. "The Star Wing says the time of choosing comes soon. The bridge between worlds must be built, or both sides will lose what matters most." Before anyone could ask what this meant, the communication console lit up with an incoming message from the Drakmari ship. The voice that spoke was deep and musical, clearly alien but speaking perfect English. "Greetings, guardians of the small wings. I am Keeper Vorthak of the Third Flame. We have traveled far to meet the one who speaks with our ancestors. May we approach in peace?" Director Walsh looked around the room at her team, then made a decision that would change human history. "This is Director Walsh of Luna Base. You may approach, but slowly. We want to talk." "We understand your caution," Keeper Vorthak replied. "We bring no weapons, only knowledge and questions. The small wings carries the voice of our greatest teacher. one who died saving our world long ago. We must understand how this miracle has occurred. Elena had been listening to the exchange, and now she turned from the window to face the adults. In clear Draconic, she said something that made Dr. Morrison gasp. She says she wants to go to them, he translated. She says the Fireheart is lonely and needs her small wings to sing the old songs. Absolutely not, Lisa said firmly. She's staying with us, but Elena wasn't finished speaking. She continued in Draconic, her words flowing like music, and Dr. Morrison struggled to keep up with the translation. She says she understands why her birth parents are afraid. But she also says that both humans and Drakmari are in danger. There's something coming, something that will threaten both species unless they learn to work together. What kind of danger? Director Walsh asked. Elena looked directly at her and spoke a single word in Draconic that Dr. Morrison didn't need to translate. The word was devourers, and it carried with it images of darkness, hunger, and the end of civilizations. The communication console activated again, and Keeper Vorthak's voice filled the room. The small wing speaks truth. Our long-range scouts have detected signs of the ancient enemy awakening in the deep void. They consumed worlds before our two species even knew fire. Only by combining our strengths can we hope to survive their return. You're talking about some kind of galactic threat, Commander Kim said. Something that could destroy both Earth and the Drakmari homeworld. Indeed, Keeper Vorthak confirmed. The Small Wings was sent to prepare for this moment. She carries within her the wisdom of Sharamoth, our greatest warrior sage who died 1,000 years ago fighting the Devourers. Through her, our species can learn to fight as one. Elena walked over to her mother and looked up at her with eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. In simple English words mixed with Draconic phrases, she said, "Mama, help friends. Bad things coming. Need to be brave." Lisa knelt down and hugged her daughter, tears streaming down her face. She could see in Elena's eyes the weight of knowledge that no child should carry, but also a wisdom and strength that gave her hope. "What do you need from us?" Director Walsh asked Keeper Vorthak. "Permission to land," came the reply, "and time to teach the Small Wings how to access the full memories of Sharamoth. The Devourers are still many years away, but we must begin preparing now." Elena pulled away from her mother's embrace and spoke again in Draconic. Dr. Morrison translated. "She says the Star Wing is tired of waiting. She wants to remember everything so she can help save both worlds." The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the magnitude of what they were facing. A cosmic threat that had destroyed civilizations, a human child carrying the soul of an ancient dragon warrior, and two species that would need to overcome centuries of mistrust to survive. Elena looked around at all the worried adults and made a sound that was unmistakably laughter. In her mix of English and Draconic, she said, "Big adventure coming." Elena not scared. And somehow her courage gave strength to everyone else in the room. The Drakmari landing ship descended toward Luna Base like a falling star made of liquid metal. It was smaller than their main vessel, but still impressive, roughly the size of a large aircraft. As it touched down on the landing pad, the ship's surface rippled and shifted, forming what looked like scales that caught the light of distant Earth. Elena had been watching from the observation deck, her small hands pressed against the reinforced glass. As the ship settled, she began making excited sounds in Draconic that Dr. Morrison translated as variations of, they're here, the Firehearts have come home." A section of the ship's hull flowed apart like water, revealing an opening. 3 figures emerged, moving with a grace that was both alien and magnificent. The Drakmari were indeed like the dragons of human legend, but more beautiful than any myth had imagined. Keeper Vorthak led the group. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, with scales that shifted from deep blue to silver depending on the angle of light. His wings were folded against his back, but even compressed they were massive. His eyes were like golden stars, ancient and wise and kind. The second Drakmari was smaller and younger, with scales of emerald green. This was Scholar Thessian, who carried what looked like a crystal tablet covered in flowing symbols. The third was the most striking of all, an elderly female with scales of pure white and eyes like sapphires. This was Elder Miralith, the oldest of their kind still living. Director Walsh met them at the airlock, flanked by Commander Kim and a security detail. The moment was historic, the first time Drakmari had set foot on a human world. But all the diplomatic protocols seemed unimportant when Elena's voice echoed through the communication system. She was speaking rapidly and draconic from the observation deck, and Dr. Morrison hurried to translate. "She's greeting them by name," he said in amazement. "She's calling Keeper Vorthak Fireheart of the Third Flame and Elder Miraleth Grandmother of All Wisdom. Those are titles that don't appear in any of our databases." Keeper Vorthak looked up toward the observation deck and replied in Draconic, his voice carrying easily through the thin atmosphere. Dr. Morrison translated. He's saying, "We greet you, small wings who carries the star flame. We have traveled far to hear the voice of our beloved teacher. Can we bring Elena down to meet them?" Lisa asked nervously. She had been preparing for this moment for days, but actually seeing the massive alien beings made her realize how small and fragile her daughter was. "I think," Director Walsh said carefully, "that Elena has been waiting for this meeting longer than any of us realize." They brought Elena to the main conference room, where the Drakmari were waiting. The moment she saw them, she ran forward without fear, speaking rapidly in their language. Keeper Vorthak knelt down to bring himself closer to her height, and Elena walked right up to him and placed her tiny hand on his massive snout. The effect was immediate and startling. Keeper Vorthak's eyes went wide, and he made a sound that was part gasp, part musical note. The other Drakmari stepped forward quickly, their own eyes showing amazement. "What just happened?" Commander Kim asked, her hand moving instinctively toward her weapon. Elder Miraleth spoke in accented but clear English. The child touched his mind. "She carries the full presence of Sharamoth, our greatest teacher. Through her, our warrior sage lives again." Elena was still chattering away in Draconic, and now all three aliens were listening with expressions of wonder and joy. Scholar Thessian activated his crystal tablet, and symbols began flowing across its surface as he recorded every word. "She is telling us of her dreams," Keeper Vorthak explained, switching to English out of courtesy to the humans. "For many nights she has walked in the crystal caves of our homeworld with Sharamoth as her guide. She knows our history, our culture, our deepest secrets, not as an outsider who learned them, but as one who lived them." Dr. Morrison was taking notes furiously. "How is this possible? Elena has never left human space. How can she have memories of your world?" "The bond between souls transcends physical distance," Elder Miraleth explained. "When Sharamoth died protecting our world from the Devourers, her spirit refused to pass into the final flame. She waited, watching until a suitable vessel could be born. When this child came into existence, Sharamoth joined with her soul, sharing consciousness across the void between worlds." "But why a human child?" Lisa asked. "Why not one of your own people?" "Because," Keeper Vorthak said gently, "the coming war will require both species to work as one. A Drakmari child could not understand human nature well enough to bridge our peoples. A human child alone could not comprehend our ways. But this small wings carries both natures within her. She is truly a child of two worlds." Elena had been listening to the adult conversation, and now she tugged on Keeper Vorthak's arm. When he leaned down, she whispered something in Draconic that made his expression grow serious. "What did she say?" Director Walsh asked. "She says the Starwing, Sharamoth, wants to show us something important. Something about the enemy that approaches." Elena walked to the center of the room and sat down on the floor. She closed her eyes and began speaking in Draconic, but her voice had changed. It was deeper, more resonant, carrying authority that seemed impossible from such a small child. "She is channeling Sharamoth directly," Elder Miraleth whispered. "This should not be possible. The child is too young to handle such a powerful spirit." But Elena seemed perfectly calm as she spoke. The Drakmari listened with growing alarm, occasionally exchanging worried glances. Dr. Morrison was translating as fast as he could. "She's describing the Devourers," he said. "They're not just destroyers. They're consumers of life force itself. They feed on the energy that all living beings produce, draining entire worlds until nothing remains but empty husks. She says they've been sleeping in the void between galaxies. But something has awakened them." Elena's voice grew more urgent, and her small hands began moving through the air as if she were drawing invisible diagrams. "The Devourers move in swarms." Dr. Morrison continued translating. "Millions of creatures that look like living shadows with too many teeth. They're guided by larger beings called Hunger Lords, ancient intelligences that have consumed thousands of civilizations. The swarm that's approaching is being led by one called the Void Mother, the most terrible of all their kind." Scholar Thessian was working frantically with his crystal tablet, recording everything. "When will they arrive?" he asked Elena in Draconic. Elena opened her eyes and looked directly at him. In English, she said, 7 years. Maybe 8. Depends on how many worlds they stop to eat along the way. The room fell silent. 7 years seemed like a long time, but everyone present understood that it would take much longer than that to prepare 2 species for a war unlike anything either had ever faced. What do we need to do? Director Walsh asked. Elena stood up and walked over to her parents. In her strange mix of languages, she said, "Build ships. Big ones, learn to fight together. Mama and Papa need to be brave because Elena has to teach everyone the Star Wings secrets." Lisa knelt down and hugged her daughter. "We'll be brave, sweetheart. But you're still our little girl. You don't have to carry this burden alone." Elena smiled and patted her mother's cheek. "Not alone, Mama. Have Firehearts now. Have Starwing. Have family. Together we make the bad things go away." Keeper Vorthak stood and addressed the room formally. "We propose an alliance between our peoples. We will share our technology, our knowledge, our strength. In return, we ask that the small wings be allowed to travel between our worlds, teaching both species what they need to know to survive." "She's just a baby," Marcus protested. "She is the bridge between our peoples," Elder Miraleth said kindly. "But she will remain a child who needs love and protection. We understand this. We have children too, and we know they need their parents." Elena looked around at all the worried faces and laughed. "Big family now," she announced. "Dragons and humans and Elena. Bad things not so scary when everyone together." And despite the magnitude of the threat they faced, everyone in the room found themselves smiling at the impossible courage of one small girl who carried the wisdom of ages in her heart. 5 years had passed since the first meeting between Elena and the Drakmari. The universe had changed dramatically during that time, transformed by an alliance that no one could have imagined. Human and Drakmari ships now worked together throughout the solar system, building massive defense platforms and training for the war that was coming. Elena, now 6 years old, had become something unique in the galaxy, a child who belonged to 2 species simultaneously. She spent half her time on Luna Base with her human family, and half on the Drakmari ship with her alien teachers. She moved between both worlds effortlessly, equally comfortable playing with human children and learning ancient combat techniques from dragon warriors. The girl had grown into her role as bridge between species, but she was still very much a child. She giggled when Keeper Vorthak told funny stories, cried when she scraped her knee and got excited about birthday parties. Yet when she spoke with the voice of Sharamoth, she could discuss military strategy with generals and design spacecraft with the best engineers. "The hybrid ships are working better than we hoped," reported Admiral Sarah Chen, Dr. Chen's daughter who had followed her mother into space service. She was addressing the joint Human-Drakmari Council that met weekly to coordinate their preparations. "Elena's designs for combining our propulsion systems with Drakmari crystal technology have produced vessels 3 times faster than anything either species had before." Elena was sitting at the council table, her small legs swinging from a chair that was too big for her. She was drawing pictures with crayons while listening to the adult discussion. Occasionally, she would look up and offer suggestions in her mix of English and Draconic. "Fire crystals need better cooling," she said without looking up from her artwork. "Ships get too hot in engine room. Make crew sick." Scholar Thessian consulted his ever-present crystal tablet. "The small wings is correct. Our engineering teams have reported elevated temperatures in the hybrid engine compartments. How do you suggest we address this?" Elena set down her crayon and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, everyone could see that Sharamoth was speaking through her. "Redirect coolant flow through secondary matrix. Use human heat exchange principles with Drakmari thermal crystals. Create buffer zone between flame and flesh." The technical details that followed were far beyond what a 6-year-old should understand, but the engineers present took careful notes. Elena's suggestions, channeled through Sharamoth's ancient wisdom, had solved dozens of similar problems over the years. "Thank you, Starwing," Keeper Vorthak said formally when Elena's eyes returned to normal. "Your guidance continues to light our path." Elena smiled and went back to her drawing. She was sketching something that looked like spaceships fighting monsters, with stick figures that were clearly meant to be humans and dragons working together. Director Walsh, now promoted to Supreme Coordinator of Allied Forces, stood to address the most pressing issue. "Our long-range sensors have detected the advanced scouts of the Devourer swarm. They're still 2 years out, but they're definitely coming. It's time to implement the final phase of our defense strategy. The Star Forge, Elder Miralith said solemnly. Are we truly ready for such an undertaking? Elena looked up from her drawing. Ready as we can be, she said in her normal child's voice. Starwing says we build the big ship now, or we all become monster food later. The Star Forge was Elena's most ambitious design, channeled through Sharamoth's memories of the ancient war against the Devourers. It was a massive spacecraft, larger than anything either species had ever attempted to build. The ship would serve as both a mobile battle platform and a refuge for civilians if their worlds fell to the enemy. Construction will require resources from both species, Admiral Chen reported. We'll need to strip mine 3 asteroids and harvest crystal deposits from the Drakmari outer colonies. It will take everything we have. What about the weapon systems? Commander Kim asked. She was now in charge of tactical planning for the Alliance. Elena, can Sharamoth tell us more about how to fight these creatures? Elena put down her crayons entirely and stood on her chair, so she could see everyone better. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of ancient memory. Devourers feed on life energy, she said, sounding far older than her years. Normal weapons just make them stronger. Need special fire, soul flame that burns their hunger away. Drakmari fire crystals can make soul flame, but need human quantum mechanics to focus it properly. The technical explanation that followed required 3 xenolinguists to translate properly. Elena described weapons that could disrupt the Devourer's ability to feed, shielding systems that could protect life energy from being drained, and combat tactics that had been used successfully in battles fought before human civilization even existed. How many ships will we need? Director Walsh asked. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant. Many, she finally said in a small voice. Starwing remembers losing whole fleets. These bad things very hungry, very smart. But humans and dragons together stronger than anyone alone might be enough. Lisa and Marcus had been listening from the observation gallery as they did during every council meeting. They were proud of their daughter's importance to the Alliance, but they worried about the burden she carried. Elena rarely complained, but they could see the strain in her eyes when she channeled Sharamoth's memories. After the meeting ended, Elena ran to her parents with the enthusiasm of any normal child. Mama, Papa, look what I drew. She showed them her picture of the coming battle. Despite the crayon medium, the artwork was remarkably detailed, showing the Star Forge surrounded by smaller ships facing off against dark creatures that seemed to writhe on the paper. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Lisa said, though the image filled her with dread. Are you scared about what's coming? Elena considered the question seriously. Little bit scared, she admitted. Starwing shows me bad memories sometimes, but also shows me good ones. Shows me how brave people can be when they fight for family. You don't have to fight, Elena, Marcus said firmly. You've already done more than anyone could ask. But I want to help, Elena replied. Dragons are family now? Humans are family. Elena protects family. Keeper Vorthak approached them, having overheard the conversation. The small wings will be aboard the Star Forge during the battle, he assured Elena's parents. She will be protected by our best warriors. Her role is to coordinate our forces, not to fight directly. Promise? Lisa asked. I promise, Keeper Vorthak said solemnly. Though I suspect our small wings will have her own ideas about staying safe when the time comes. Elena giggled. Starwing very stubborn. Always wants to be where fighting is worst. But Elena smarter. Elena stays where it can help most. That evening, as Elena prepared for bed in their quarters on Luna Base, she asked her mother a question that revealed how much she truly understood about their situation. Mama, what happens if we lose? If bad things eat all the worlds? Lisa struggled to find an answer that would comfort her daughter without lying. I don't know, sweetheart, but I know that we'll all face whatever comes together. You've helped humans and dragons become family. That's worth fighting for no matter what happens. Elena nodded seriously. Starwing says even if we lose, what we built together will make the universe remember us. Love is stronger than hunger, even when hunger wins. She paused, then added in her normal childish voice. Besides, Elena not planning to lose. Bad things picked wrong universe to mess with. And as her mother tucked her into bed, Elena began humming a lullaby in Draconic, one that Sharamoth had sung to her own children 1,000 years ago. The melody spoke of hope in dark times, of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. and of the power that came from standing together against the darkness. The Devourers were coming, but they would find humanity and the Drakmari ready for them, united by the love of one small girl who had bridged the gap between species and shown them all what it meant to be family. The day the Devourers arrived, Elena was celebrating her 7th birthday aboard the Starforge. The massive ship hung in space between Earth and Mars, its crystalline hull gleaming with the combined technology of 2 species. Despite the approaching threat, her parents had insisted on maintaining normal childhood traditions, and the ship's recreational deck had been decorated with balloons and streamers. Make a wish. Small wings, Keeper Vorthak said as Elena leaned over her birthday cake. The cake itself was a marvel of cooperation. Human chocolate enhanced with Drakmari spices that made it glow softly from within. Elena closed her eyes and blew out the 7 candles. But before anyone could ask what she had wished for, the ship's alert system activated. The soft lighting changed to warning amber, and Admiral Chen's voice echoed through the corridors. All hands to battle stations. Long-range sensors have detected the Devourer Vanguard entering the outer system. This is not a drill. Elena's birthday party dissolved as officers rushed to their posts, but the little girl remained calm, standing in the middle of the chaos with her eyes closed and her head tilted as if listening to something only she could hear. "What does the Star Wing tell you?" Elder Moralith asked, recognizing the signs that Elena was communing with Sheramoth. "They're different from what Star Wing remembers," Elena said in her channeling voice. "Stronger, hungrier. The Void Mother has learned new tricks since the ancient war." She opened her eyes and looked directly at the assembled leaders. "Change the battle plan. They expect us to defend from positions. We need to move, to dance among the stars like fire spirits in the wind." Director Walsh activated the ship's communication system. "All fleet commanders, this is Supreme Coordinator Walsh. We're implementing Battle Plan Omega-7 on the authority of our tactical advisor." There were a few moments of silence before the responses came in. The idea that a 7-year-old girl was their primary tactical advisor still seemed surreal to many officers. But Elena's track record spoke for itself. "Understood." "Starforge," came Admiral Reeves's voice from the flagship Prometheus. "Human battle group adjusting to mobile formation. Dragon Wing acknowledges," added Wing Commander Sareth from the Drakmari fleet. "Crystal ships ready for fire dance maneuvers." Elena was moved to the command center where she could observe the approaching enemy and coordinate the defense. The main viewing screen showed space that looked normal, but the sensors painted a different picture. Thousands of dark shapes were moving through the outer system, consuming asteroids and small moons as they advanced. "There," Elena pointed at a section of space that appeared empty. "Void Mother hiding behind the hunger swarm. See the way space bends wrong? She makes shadows where shouldn't be shadows." Director Walsh squinted at the screen but couldn't see what Elena was pointing at. However, when the technical crew adjusted their sensors based on her directions, a massive shape resolved itself from the darkness. The Void Mother was larger than Earth's moon, a writhing mass of shadow and teeth that hurt to look at directly. "How did you see that?" Commander Kim asked in amazement. "Starwing remembers," Elena said simply. "Void Mothers always hide. Make little ones do the dying while they stay safe and eat." The battle began as the Devourer Vanguard reached the inner system. The creatures moved like living shadows, their forms shifting and flowing in ways that defied physics. When they encountered the first defense platforms, the automated weapons had little effect. The Devourers simply absorbed the energy of the blasts and grew larger. "Soul flame weapons now," Elena commanded, her child's voice carrying absolute authority. The combined fleet opened fire with weapons that no single species could have created. Human quantum emitters channeled through Drakmari fire crystals produced beams of pure soul flame that actually caused the Devourers to shriek and recoil. "It's working," Admiral Chen reported from her battlecruiser. "The new weapons are hurting them." But Elena's expression was troubled. "Not enough. They adapt too fast. Starwing says we need the big fire now." She was referring to the Starforge's primary weapon, a massive soul flame cannon that had never been tested at full power. Activating it would drain the ship's entire energy reserve, leaving them defenseless if the attack failed. "Elena, are you sure?" Director Walsh asked. "If this doesn't work, we won't get another chance." Elena looked around the command center at all the worried adult faces. For a moment, she was just a little girl who missed her birthday party and wanted her parents to tell her everything would be okay. Then she straightened her shoulders and became something more. Starwing is sure, she said. Void Mother thinks she clever, hiding behind little ones. But Big Fire burns through everything. Show her that children of two worlds not afraid of shadows. The Starforge's main weapon began to charge, drawing power from every system on the ship. The lights dimmed, artificial gravity fluctuated, and the air recyclers slowed to a whisper. Everything the ship had was being fed into the Soul Flame cannon. 30 seconds to full charge, reported the weapons officer. Elena was standing at the tactical display, her small hands moving over the controls with impossible precision. She was calculating firing solutions that required knowledge of physics, psychology, and ancient Drakmari warfare all at once. There, she said, pointing at a spot in space that seemed no different from any other. Fire there. Trust Elena. The Starforge's main cannon discharged with a flash that could be seen from Mars. A beam of pure soul flame, white-hot and terrible, lanced across space toward the point Elena had designated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the universe screamed. The Void Mother's camouflage dissolved as the soul flame struck her directly. The ancient creature writhed in agony, her massive form becoming visible as shadows peeled away like burnt skin. Her death cry was so powerful it disrupted communications across the entire solar system. Direct hit, Admiral Chen reported when the systems came back online. The Void Mother she's dissolving. It was true. The massive creature that had led the Devourer swarm was breaking apart, her essence scattered by the Soul Flame's power. But more importantly, her death sent a psychic shock through her followers. The smaller Devourers, suddenly leaderless, began turning on each other in confusion and hunger. Now we finish them, Elena said, her voice carrying both childish satisfaction and ancient wisdom. While they fight each other, we show them what real teamwork looks like. The battle that followed was fierce but brief. Human and Drakmari ships worked in perfect coordination, their crews trained by years of joint exercises. They picked off the confused Devourers one by one, using their soul flame weapons to ensure that none of the creatures could escape to threaten other worlds. When the last of the enemy was destroyed, Elena finally allowed herself to act like a 7-year-old again. She plopped down on the floor of the command center and started crying, not from fear or sadness, but from exhaustion and relief. Is it over? She asked in her normal voice as her parents rushed to comfort her. It's over, sweetheart, Lisa said, hugging her daughter tightly. You saved everyone. Not just Elena, the little girl insisted. Everyone together. Dragons and humans and Starwing. Family saves family. Keeper Vorthak knelt beside them, his massive form gentle as he addressed the child who had bridged two worlds. The Starwing has returned to the eternal flame, he said softly. Can you feel her departure? Elena nodded, wiping her eyes. She says job is done. Says Elena can be just Elena now, not have to carry grown-up thoughts anymore. And what do you want to be? Director Walsh asked. Elena considered the question seriously. Want to be kid who helped dragons and humans become family. Want to play with both kinds of friends. Want to learn how to fly spaceships when I'm bigger. She paused, then added with a grin. And want to finish birthday party. Still got presents to open. The laughter that filled the command center was the sound of two species celebrating together, bound by the courage of one small girl who had shown them that love and cooperation could overcome any darkness. In the years that followed, Elena grew up as the first true citizen of both worlds. She never again channeled Sharamoth's spirit, but she carried the Dragon Warrior's greatest lesson in her heart. That strength came not from fighting alone, but from standing together with those you loved. The Devourers never returned to threaten human or Drakmari space. But even if they had, they would have found two species ready for them, united, determined, and protected by the bonds forged by a child who spoke the dragon's tongue and showed the universe what it meant to be family.